All right, everybody, welcome back to Big Tech Talks with Colin and Pavel. We are super excited today to talk to you guys about accessibility. So, Pavel, how about you get us started and talk to us about what is web accessibility and what's that look like?
Hey, Colin. Hey, guys. Yes, accessibility is a very important topic to me. So I'm hoping we can make actually a series about accessibility and we can make more videos. Today, we're going to focus on the business side of accessibility, how businesses should handle accessibility. But in other episodes, I hope we can talk about the technical aspects. And accessibility is actually a huge topic. Today, we're just going to talk about the business considerations for accessibility. So you ask a question, what is an accessibility? So to define that accessibility to a business person, you can tell that accessibility is a way to make websites and digital products accessible to people with disabilities. But how do you define disabilities? It's not only people with visual impairments. It's not only motor impairments. It's all kinds of disability. It might be cognitive disability. People might not be able to hear. That's another kind of disability. So it's the whole variety of factors that counts towards being disabled. But on the other hand, you have different kinds of accessibility issues, like mobile devices. Would you consider using your mobile device as an accessibility concern ever?
I would hope so. I mean, given that we use it, so often. I mean, I probably use my phone more than my computer at this point.
So it's much, much less a problem right now, but a couple of years ago, a lot of websites or web apps that were accessible in the web browser weren't actually accessible through your web app. They either had a limited functionality or they had problems with using this web app on your phone because it has a touch screen. It's not the same as having a keyboard and mouse. So it's actually an accessibility concern to allow your users to use your mobile website. The same goes for smartwatches. There is a completely different kind of interaction that you have to design for, or smart TVs. For example, home screen devices. I have a smart screen in my kitchen where I can use voice commands just to set a timer when I'm cooking a dinner. Then different input modes, like using a pen when you're using a tablet or using a mouse, or in the kiosk application, you have touchscreen. This all comes down to be an accessibility concern that you have to design for.
Well, I think we should also talk about, who is actually impacted by accessibility, because I think a lot of people might think that it's just a small minority of people who need that accessibility help.
Yeah, so traditionally we think about accessibility problems related to low or no vision, or maybe color blindness. It's estimated that about 5% of every population has problem with color blindness, or any kind of visual disability, impairment. So from low to no vision to color blindness. That's already like a huge number. But a Forrester research study commissioned by Microsoft found that 57% of users aged 18 to 64 are likely to benefit from accessible technology because they have mild or severe impairment. Any kind of impairment. It can be motor impairment, it can be mental impairment, it can be visual disability. On top of that, add adults age 65, 74 who are using computers and are also in the market for accessibility, meaning we have to design different for those people, like having a high contrast theme in your web application so they can easily see the text. So as you can see, this is a huge number of people who are actually affected by accessibility issues.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Let's talk about the business side. since I think that's really important for us today. Why is it so important for businesses to be accessible on their web platforms, their apps, and everything like that?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, and given what we just said, it increases the target market by including those people to your target market. So when you define your target market for your business, if you're not accessible, you automatically extract those people from your target market. So you intentionally or unintentionally removing people from your target market. So you have to be accessible to actually expand your target market.
Mm-hmm.
There is a research. This is a study of Fortune 100 companies, which indicates that there's a disability inclusion as part of your overall diversity strategy is a common practice among high-performing businesses.
I'm actually curious, are there any companies that you feel do a fantastic job with accessibility?
Oh, yes. The first that comes to my mind is Apple. They are actually great, not only in design in general, but accessibility is the core of their design principles. So they make really accessible projects. On the other hand, there's also Google that puts a lot of effort into implementing accessibility the right way. So going back to business cases for accessibility for your business, what it gives you, accessibility drives innovation. That's a surprising statement. So contrast minimums, which are required for people with low vision, are now help all people see in bright light glare situation. So when you're outside with your phone and there's direct sunlight on your phone, you can still actually see a text. It's because we got contrast minimums guidelines. Then autocomplete, which is today widely used all over the internet, was initially provided to people with disabilities to help them enter text into a text box. So another example of an innovation that was that started as an accessibility feature. Voice control was initially done for people with impairments, and now it's used to actually control our devices, and it's very growing. Another thing is a research that was initially done to provide visual context to users with visual impairments was a base for artificial intelligence advances. So the research to extract voice, for example, from text from an audio sample, or from video to help users to read the text instead of hearing it for people who can hear. The initial research that was done for this accessibility feature was actually a base for anything that we've done with AI so far. So yeah, there is a lot of innovation, improvements that were driven from, that was taken from accessibility research. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic that's, starting with accessibility concern and issue, you actually drive completely new products. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you learn so much when you're helping someone or helping people with some sort of disability and giving them better accessibility, because clearly this has helped us make our lives, pretty much everybody's lives, a little bit easier. So yeah, that's really cool. I think we also wanted to touch just a little bit on some of the legal aspects of this, because not all countries are the same with how they treat their accessibility.
I'm not a legal expert, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to talk too much about legal aspects of this. But fun fact: in Norway, it is illegal for a commercial website to fail to provide equivalent access to people with disabilities. They actually made it illegal. So if you have a website that is not accessible for people with disabilities, the government can actually fine you The European Union adopted a European Accessibility Act requiring many businesses to meet accessibility requirements. It's like halfway between the US and Norway. Mm-hmm. So some businesses are required. For others, it's just a recommendation. They should be more accessible. So an example, all telecoms in Europe have to provide accessible website. Otherwise, they can be fined by the European Commission, I think. And in the US, finally, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which created a legal basis for many lawsuits against companies that would discriminate against disabled people. There is no actual legal requirement today in the US for any company other than a government agency to provide accessible content, digital content. But the ADA already created some legal framework for people to sue companies for not being accessible.
Got it. So while it's not necessarily a requirement, if it's enough of an issue for certain people, they can take a level of legal action.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, got it. Okay, really cool. Yeah, and I think it makes sense, that companies or that countries are making that a priority and helping as many people as they can with that. Do you feel like there's a particular type of accessibility that would, like, if you could choose like one that every website or any company had to have just to help the most people, like in the now? Is there any one type of accessibility that would help the most people at once?
There is no one element that you can fix and you fix all your accessibility problems. It's a range of issues that you're dealing with. Like I already mentioned, it's people with visual disabilities. They have different problems. People with motor disabilities, they have different problems. They won't be able to operate a mouse, for example, or maybe a keyboard. Then you have a group with people with mental disabilities, cognitive issues. You have different issues to cover here. So unfortunately, there is no one big thing that you can do today and fix your accessibility problems. It's more about creating programs in your organization that will help you get to be accessible.
And it probably makes sense to also have us talk about why, like, what's the value for businesses, right? Because if we have more incentives for businesses to do this, then more businesses will do it, right? So let's talk a little bit about why a business would benefit from more accessibility.
Okay, so two obvious benefits is the brand image and reputation. Companies implement CSR. It helps you, and CSR is actually linked to better financial performance, enhanced brand image and reputation, increased sales, customer loyalty, and retaining talent. So yeah, that's like one of the obvious things to consider what value it brings. The other one is to consider how you can innovate and create new products while committing to research for accessibility. You can actually drive innovation from your accessibility efforts. That's what Google did, Apple did, and many other companies drove innovation out of it. But if this doesn't actually work for you just yet, then consider this equation. So imagine a number. What is it worth to your organization to double a conversion rate in 3 months? Your organization gonna spend some amount of money to increase the conversion rate, to double the conversion rate. Then imagine another number. What is it worth to your organization to increase organic search engine traffic by 50%? Now sum up these two numbers, and this is something that you can put into your spreadsheet that tells you how much you can gain from accessibility. We discussed this before. Over 50% of people of your target is going to be somewhat affected by accessibility issues. So if you include this 50% of people, you can actually double your conversion rate. You can double your organic traffic, because Google actually promotes web applications and websites that are accessible. So yeah, that's the number you can put into your spreadsheet. Why you should create accessibility programs in your organization.
Let's kind of wrap up a little bit with what are going to be like, the costs and the things that companies are going to have to think about in order to successfully implement accessibility.
Yes, of course, there is a cost to everything. So upfront costs is usually higher than the long-term costs. The cost is actually reduced over time. So the upfront cost is the cost of training people for accessibility, creating accessibility programs, adopting new development standards by your development team, so they can have standards that they can use to create accessible content. Likely to update your code base, like libraries, UI libraries, frameworks, and so on. But when this is done, when this initial cost is already spent, then implementing new products using those standards and these procedures are going to automatically be accessible. So you don't have additional costs later, and your products are actually accessible. So yeah, there is a cost upfront that you have to pay to make your products accessible. It's mostly human resources and development time. But long run, it's actually quite easy to work with it in the future.
So it sounds like most companies would benefit from just hitting the ground running and starting with accessibility, as opposed to trying to kind of shoehorn it in later down the road as they've gotten bigger and bigger.
My organization last year implemented those procedures and standards for accessibility, which was already like a decade down the road in our product development. And that was huge investments. Actually, most of the teams had to drop everything and conform to organization accessibility standards. I actually spent like a couple of weeks with my engineering team to redesign our products and then how to implement correctly the accessibility. But we've done this. It's also better if you are starting a new product to think about accessibility upfront before you even start designing the product. This way, the costs of change in the future gonna be much, much less.
There we go. Plenty of reasons to do it. Plenty of innovations. I see pretty much nothing but upsides to, including more people and getting more accessibility online.
Yeah, but consider one more thing. I strongly believe that accessibility to digital content should be a human right. Yes.
Me too, right? It's as simple as it's like a wheelchair ramp. Like, why wouldn't you have it? Why wouldn't you have it? So I think that's a good way of looking at it, because nobody would consider that a bad idea to have a wheelchair ramp or these other kind of physical or more tangible accessibility, the types of accessibility. So I think as our lives become more, linked to the web, it only makes sense to make it more and more accessible to more people. So.
All right, I think we talked enough about the business case. I really hope we can make another episode about the actual technical aspects of accessibility.
I think so. A part 2 would be fantastic, because I think that's going to be equally as interesting, learning how to do it, learning a little bit more of how that's done, and just getting people excited, because I think it should be just, I think there's parts of development, right, that some people think is like kind of fun and exciting, and other parts that people think is like not as exciting. I think I equate that to like going to the gym, where I love training my upper body, but I always, scoff at training lower body. because
Yeah.
in my mind, I think it's going to suck and it's going to hurt more. But I am always happy once I've actually started doing it, and it's pretty much the same experience. So hopefully we can get more people excited about making accessibility a fun thing to implement and be creative with, because then hopefully down the road we get more innovation too.
Yes, that's right.
All right, Pavel, as always, thank you very much, and thank you to our audience. If you like the video, please, leave a like. If you have any comments, thoughts, anything like that, go down below. We want to hear what you have to say, and tune in next time.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe.